Alright, we know you want to know the settings we use for each monitor we test. We get it. You want your brand new monitor to have the best picture quality possible. But here's the thing. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So choosing what looks right for you is really a personal preference. Hey, I'm Nicholas from Rtings.com. Today we're going to talk about what to do if you want to adjust your monitor settings to get a picture that you like. It's easy to get in a rabbit hole here. There are just a ton of settings you could change. Black level, contrast, gamma, color tone. What do they all mean? We're going to take you through all that in today's video and show you what to do when you feel like your picture quality is off. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, there are a few things you should know. Each monitor has a different panel. Yes, even two units of the same model. This means that no two monitors will look exactly alike no matter what you do. This also means you shouldn't copy any settings from other people. Even more importantly, you should not, I repeat, you should not copy our ICC profile that we create for every monitor that we test. Doing so can make your image look even more inaccurate. If you truly care about having the most accurate colors, like if you're a content creator, then it's better to invest in a colorimeter or at least pay for a full calibration. But those are also costly, and this isn't what this video is about. Instead, we want to teach you how to play around with the settings available on your monitor and show what each does. Keep in mind that in reality, most settings should be left at their default. But if you feel that the default settings make the quality look a bit wonky, then you should try adjusting them until you find something you like. And while picture quality is ultimately a personal preference, we're also going to show you ways to get your quality the closest to what we use for testing. And the last thing we'll mention is that this concept applies for both SDR and HDR. But not every monitor has all these settings available in HDR, so it may be harder to fine-tune it depending on which monitor you have. To start off, we're going to use the LG 27GR95UMB as an example, but this video applies to pretty much any modern monitor out there. The settings on most monitors do the same thing. Sure, they might be called different names, but once you understand the goal of each setting, adjusting them will be a breeze. We'll start with the picture mode. Different modes change the preset settings. That's the basic function of it. The exact name changes between brands, but it's easy to understand which is the picture mode setting. There are some modes that are meant for gaming, others for editing, and there are some that make the image get the brightest at the cost of accuracy. Besides that, some monitors have a dedicated sRGB mode. This helps for content creation if you use the sRGB color space, as it's meant to lock colors to that space. But on most monitors, using this mode also locks out other settings and makes the screen dimmer. You might also find that colors look dull. This is actually the goal of it, as you don't want colors to look oversaturated, so only choose this if you need such accurate colors. Ultimately, you could play around here and find which one you like the best and adjust from there. The brightness setting controls the backlight intensity. You should put it to its max if you're using the monitor in a bright room and want it to fight glare. On the other hand, lower it if you're in a dark room and you're sensitive to bright lights. While this brightness setting doesn't impact the image accuracy, there are others that do, like the black level. The name of the setting is pretty different between brands, and sometimes it isn't even in the picture settings, but in the gaming settings. Regardless of what it's called on your monitor, it's meant to adjust the black level of the image. Increasing this setting can help you see opponents better in dark scenes, but the trade-off is that blacks look gray. However, if you set it too low, then it crushes blacks and you lose details. You could use a gradient pattern to help you find the right level. You'll want to adjust it until you see all the vertical bars with a clear difference between them. You can find these test patterns on our website with the link available below. In contrast, the contrast setting controls the white levels. It's named this on most monitors. For this, you want to find the right level because if it's too high, then you lose a ton of details, and if it's too low, then the image is too dark. You could use a test pattern and adjust it until you see all the vertical bars. But you don't even need a pattern. You can open any web page or even an Excel sheet to see what this setting does. Right away, you could see that setting it too high makes you lose those lines, so you need to make sure to set it to a level where you see them. There's another setting to change the brightness of the entire image without increasing the backlight, and that's gamma. This is the difference between the bright and dark areas of the screen. While the most accurate is 2.2, you may want to adjust it to see opponents better in dark games. Funny thing is that a lower gamma makes for a brighter image, and a higher gamma makes it darker. Some monitors, like this LG, have different gamma modes, so it's hard to know what gamma level they're targeting. Instead, we're going to use an Acer monitor to showcase this. You can see right away how different it looks with a gamma of 1.8 versus 2.6. There are a couple of other picture settings we're going to look at too. One of them is sharpness, which most of the time you should leave at its default. But like with any setting, you can change it how you like. No one is stopping you. As the name explains, this makes text and shapes look sharper. You might want to increase it if you feel that everything looks a bit blurry, but doing so can cause artifacts. You can also see how lowering it makes everything look blurrier. Just looking at text is the easiest way to tell if you're adjusting it right. So these settings are great for fine-tuning your picture quality. But the ones that have the biggest impact are the color temperature and color settings. Each brand handles these differently. Some have them all together under one color temperature setting, and others have them separate, like on this LG. So we'll show you what they all do. Starting with the color temperature. This makes your image look warmer or colder. A cold color temperature has a blue tint, and a warm one has a red tint. It's best to leave it at its default for a neutral tone. But if you find that the screen looks too blue or red, then this is the setting you should adjust. On this LG monitor, you can also customize the color temperature in two ways. There's a manual setting that you could use to set it warmer or colder. This is rare for most monitors, as instead, most let you fine-tune the RGB settings. When you get to this point, you might need some tools or at least expert knowledge about colors. These settings affect the white balance, so it could really impact the accuracy if you don't adjust them properly. Like if you set the red setting to 0, then you get a baby blue tone on the monitor. Sure, this is an exaggeration, but this is to help you understand what these settings do. Some monitors have more color settings, like on this one that has hue and saturation for different colors. These are meant to change specific aspects of each color and not necessarily the white balance. We usually leave them at their default, but like with any of the settings that we've mentioned, you should try playing around with them to find a balance you like. We even have a pattern that you could use to adjust these. So now that we know about the picture settings, what about motion settings? One of the main ones is the overdrive. This adjusts how hard the monitor drives the pixels for a faster response time. Most monitors have this setting, but the name of it changes between brands. Most of the time, the more aggressive settings have a faster response time at the cost of having more overshoot that causes inverse ghosting. This can be really distracting when there's too much overshoot. The less aggressive settings have less overshoot, but a slower response time. So there's blur instead. So choosing the right setting really depends on what you prefer, less blur or less inverse ghosting. Just keep in mind that only LCD monitors have overdrive settings and not OLEDs. Why, you ask? Well, OLEDs have a near instant response time, so they don't need them. What OLEDs do need is black frame insertion, known as BFI. But this also helps with LED monitors as well, and it's called backlight strobing with these. It's meant to reduce persistence blur and improve the appearance of motion. But how they work really varies from monitor to monitor, and not every monitor has this setting. Some work at the same time as VRR, others don't. Some allow you to change other settings with it on, others don't. Some are even customizable, where you could fine-tune it to make sure you get it just right. But unfortunately, more often than not, this feature looks pretty bad on most monitors. Just by comparing two monitors with good and bad BFI, you can see how bad really gets. So unless your monitor has a solid BFI or strobing feature, it might be better not to use it. Of course, one of the best ways to get smooth motion is by using the monitor at its max refresh rate. There usually isn't anything you need to use to get this, but some have overclock settings that you need to turn on, just like here. But just remember that you also need your computer to support high frame rates to make full use of your monitor. And if your PC can't maintain those high frame rates, then it's good to use VRR. This makes the monitor's refresh rate match the frame rate, even if it changes often, as it helps reduce screen tearing. Not all monitors have a setting to enable this, but some still do, like on this one. You also need to make sure it's enabled on your computer. Now that we've talked about the main picture and motion settings, let's talk about a few more useful things you may want to use. For starters, some LED monitors have something called local dimming. This is meant to improve the picture quality and contrast ratio, but unfortunately, this isn't the case with most monitors. Only a handful of monitors actually have good local dimming features. On those with bad local dimming, it's better to turn it off if you find it distracting, but on some, it's always on in HDR, so you can't do anything about it. Besides that, most monitors have a blue light filter setting that reduces the amount of blue light that it emits to help with eye strain. But we actually looked into this and found that the Windows nightlight feature is better at reducing blue light than the built-in setting on monitors. So if you want to use it, then it's better to use your operating system's feature instead. And lastly, another thing most gaming monitors have is virtual crosshairs. These make it easier to aim for your opponents in games, and your game's anti-cheat tool won't detect them. The types of crosshairs available change between brands and even models, so play around with the settings to see what you could use. For example, they're pretty simple on this monitor, but some others even have features that zoom in on a part of the screen. But now that you've watched this video up until this point, you probably know you should use these crosshairs if you want to. And it's like that with any setting. Sure, there are some picture settings that are more accurate than others, but all in all, it's your monitor, and you should adjust it how you like. If you want to read more about this topic, check out the written article on our website. The link is in the description below. Until next time, I'm Nicholas from Rtings.com, where we help you find the best settings for your needs. Ciao. Some work at the same time as VRR, others don't. Some allow you. Oh, what the heck?
You okay?
What the heck? Oh my. Brought me back 10 years.